The Washington Talking Book and Braille Library is working to ensure equitable access to reading for everyone. You can help by donating your car, truck, or boat. It's free and easy. Go to careasy.org/WTBBL.
Hello and welcome to Literary Notes, a podcast by the Washington Talking Book and Braille Library. I'm your producer, Nathan Ureta. Jay Rubin is known for his English translations of Japanese literature, most notably the works of novelist Haruki Murakami. But in this episode, we speak to him about his first original novel, The Sun Gods. The Sun Gods starts just before World War II, when Japanese-born Mitsuko falls in love with Tom, a widowed pastor with a very young son named Bill. After the bombing of Pearl Harbor, Mitsuko, unable to deal with Tom's growing distrust of Japan, is forced to bring herself and Bill to Minidoka internment camp. The story picks up 20 years later as Bill travels to Japan to find his mother. Library volunteer Rick Sipe sits down with Rubin to talk about his inspiration for The Sun Gods, the extensive research that went into writing it, and more. I'll play their conversation in just a bit, but stay tuned afterwards for an update on a book we covered in an earlier episode.
Today we're in the studio with Jay Rubin, the author of The Sun Gods. So welcome, Jay.
Thanks. I'm glad to be here and to learn about this organization. It's
Great. Good.
Very impressive.
Well, we really appreciate you coming in today. So, Jay, can you tell me, what was your inspiration for this book?
Ignorance. I mean, I just didn't know a thing about the 10 concentration camps that our government set up during the war to lock up Japanese, Japanese Americans and those who had not been allowed to become citizens just by virtue of birth, is in effect. And I went all the way to graduate school in not knowing a thing about it. And it was just a casual remark by my professor who said, "Oh, of course you know about the camps." And I said, "The camps? What camp? What are you talking about?" And first of all, it blew my head off
Sure.
to learn that this had happened. And then I started reading and got angrier and angrier about the whole phenomenon. And finally, I was on the East Coast at that point, and then we moved here in 1975, and then I started meeting people who had actually been locked up, and there was so much more consciousness of the so-called relocation camps out in this part of the country. I just got a sense after a while that I needed to write something to give some sense of. I guess it was just a shock at my own ignorance of the fact that this had happened. I didn't know anything, and I think, as far as I knew, nobody on the East Coast knew about it. It's just astounding. 120,000 or so people were locked up during the war for 2 to 3 years in the country, and nobody talked about it afterwards, especially the incarcerees themselves. They didn't talk about it, say, to their children. They didn't want to. They were ashamed at having been treated as it's beyond second-class citizens, but as having been treated so badly, and partly also they were ashamed for having cooperated with it. There was a fair amount of resistance, but the percentages are really tiny. From this area, Gordon Hirabayashi is one who, to me, just comes across as an absolute hero. He was a student at the University of Washington at the time. He started to cooperate with the, what's the word for when they tell you not to come out after a certain time of night, or
Curfew.
Curfew, yes. He cooperated with the curfew. And he was sitting in the library, and then his friends would say, "Hey, Gordon, it's 8 o'clock. You have to go home." And he did it at first. And then one of these nights, it occurred to him, wait a minute, I'm an American citizen. Why do I have to do this? Why should I be living according to this order of a curfew. These things dawned on him very slowly. I identify very closely with him because his mind works slowly, like mine. And it only occurred to him after a while, wait a minute, I shouldn't be doing that. And then when he was cooperating with the relocation movement, again, it took him a while to realize this is absolutely wrong. So there was just a handful. I think 4 ultimately got to the Supreme Court, and but for the most part, people cooperated.
Did he eventually go to one of the camps?
He was imprisoned.
He was?
He was in prison for 2 years. No, he did not go to a camp.
Uh-huh.
He was absolutely clear in his own mind what it meant to be an American citizen, what the Constitution meant, and that the Constitution did not allow this kind of arrest of an entire group simply on the basis of their ethnicity. There was simply no finding of any kind of guilt or anything of the sort. It was astounding that it went through the Supreme Court and was passed by the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court cooperated with it. Only in retrospect did people realize what they had done. And the war was over. People were released.
And yet there were no reparations.
No. Not till the 70s did that start to get active. They started in 78, I think, to have, yes, November 25th, 1978 was the first so-called Day of Remembrance that was held to revitalize the stalled redress movement. It was called a movement for redress.
Mm.
You hear about these things now for redress for slavery.
Mm-hmm.
That's being talked about, and there was a movement for redress, mainly propelled by third generation Japanese. Second generation tended to cooperate. Third generation started asking questions.
Mm-hmm.
Wait a minute, why was Grandpa born in Idaho? We don't live in Idaho, and that kind of thing. We moved out here, my wife and I moved out here in 1975, and then it was the first Day of Remembrance was November 25th, 1978. That's when people gathered at the Puyallup Fairgrounds to mark the time when people were locked up here in Seattle, sent to Puyallup, put in horse stalls. After that, the Day of Remembrance has been held, I think, virtually every year. Certainly it is now held annually on February 19th, which is the anniversary of the executive order that Franklin Roosevelt issued, February 19th, 1942. He made it possible for all this to happen. He never mentioned Japanese in the order, but it was the Army is empowered to lock up those that they consider a threat to national security, and it was vague in those terms. And that's what happened. It started after February 19th, 1942. People were getting sent off, I think, by April or May. People were getting locked up. Actually, the first group to get locked up was the group from Bainbridge Island.
Ah, right.
They were moved off of Bainbridge Island and brought across on the ferry. There's a scene in the book of the Bainbridge Islanders being brought across. The crowd was everywhere. They were on places like the footbridge, the Marion Street footbridge, which overlooks that landing. And every time I see that Marion Street footbridge, I can't get over it. That's where people were gathered and watching the Bainbridge Islanders being brought across.
Well, we talk about Puyallup as the staging ground
Sure.
For those people who eventually went to the camps. And yet Puyallup, as we know it, as local Northwesterners and Seattleites know it, is where we have our Washington State Fair. And we don't think of it necessarily in those terms, that this was a place where people were kept, as you say, in horse barns and probably worse, while the camps themselves were being built.
Right.
Yeah.
There was a rush job to build the 10 camps out in desert areas. The one that I write about is the one called Minidoka, which was out in Hunt, Idaho. there was felt a need to lock the people up sooner than they could build those camps. So they put them into Santa Anita racetrack in the LA area and here. And people were living in horse stalls, literally.
Yeah. Let's talk a little bit, if we can, about the characters in the book.
Okay.
Let's start with the Reverend Morton. Is he based upon any character that you know, on a real person?
Did you notice that there was another reverend who appears now and then in the book? People tend to remember
I did,
him
yes.
less. Remember his name?
I actually don't.
Yeah, he was extremely well known around here. He was called Andy Andrews, the Reverend. What's his first name?
Emery.
Emery.
Yeah.
Thank you. The Reverend Emery Andrews, who was the white English language pastor of the Japanese Baptist Church. He was, in effect, the model for Tom, the minister who betrays his congregation. He did exactly the opposite, of course. When we decided, my wife and I wrote this together, and we decided we were going to learn more about the area. And one thing we learned was that the churches were terribly important in terms of social organization among the Japanese American community. So we went to visit the Japanese Baptist Church, and there were pictures, and there were these group pictures of all these Japanese-looking people, and there was this one tall blonde guy in all of the pictures. And you read the inscription, you find out it's the Reverend Emery Andrews, and he was quite incredible. I mean, when his congregation was taken and sent out into the Idaho desert, he moved his whole family out there to live right near them, and he ministered to them in the camp. He would get into the camp. He would do weddings and funerals and whatever else ministers do. So, oddly enough, he is the model, or the reverse model, for the Reverend
Morton.
Tom Morton, thank you. My own character, Reverend Morton. A novel with Emery Andrews as a central character would probably not have too much conflict today.
Yeah, I guess
he
that's
was obviously
true.
an amazing guy.
How about some of the other characters? Are they modeled after people in your life, or?
Closest thing to my experience is Bill's experience going to Japan for the first time as a student. And that a whole lot of those scenes, many of those scenes are based on my experience going to Japan, encountering an old man walking along a grassy knoll near downtown Tokyo, and Bill decides, this man is right out of the pre-modern era, or he's right out of the Meiji period, before the modern times. Look at how he's dressed. He's dressed in a kind of traditional outfit, and I've got to talk to this man. I'll just ask him, what's the name of the street here? And I walked over to him, as you see Bill doing in the book, and asked him that question in Japanese. My Japanese was already okay. I hadn't been there that long, but it was good enough so that I could ask a question like, what's the name of this street? And his answer was, hey, mister, you from the States? I used to sell popcorn on Coney Island. He was really the absolute antithesis of a poetic Japanese traditional sort. And so I had to work that into the book. There were various things like that.
Mm-hmm. Great. So much of this book, well, it's a journey, certainly, but so much of this book talks about racism.
Mm-hmm.
Certainly the racism that occurs with Reverend Morton, it's a gradual racism, but it's something that he builds up to with his wife.
Yeah, he's totally unable to resist what's happening around him.
One of the things that struck me about your book and about your narrative is that you really did an excellent job of trying to portray the amount of racism that was going on in Seattle at the time. Often when we hear stories about the treatment of the Japanese. We hear a very kind of whitewashed, if you will, story that says, well, the Japanese needed to go to camp and they went to camp and that was it, and everybody waved goodbye. This doesn't sound like this is what really happened. Can you talk a little bit about that in your research?
Probably the most overt scene reflecting that is the night of the blackout after Pearl Harbor, when the crowd is all gathered in the streets of downtown Seattle, and they're breaking windows and breaking lights, especially because it's supposed to be a blackout, and the crowd starts yelling about, "Are you trying to cooperate with Tokyo? You know, we've got to shut things down." And they started breaking lights and yelling about the Japs and all that sort of thing. It's so easy to scratch a little bit the surface of this country and find that lurking there, and it was right there. It was not hard.
Do you see parallels in what's happening in the country right now to what was happening in the country then?
Oh, please. It's absolutely shocking. I figured, okay, this is it. My book is going to become a bestseller because people are going to be just so shocked at Trump that they're going to want to see narratives of this kind of thing going on. Probably the most astounding thing was when mentioned the relocation camps as a model that could be used for locking up Muslims, and he meant it. This was not something for the country to be ashamed of. It was something to put into practice now. We have all these terrible Muslims now, and we need to lock them up. It's just shocking how much of this is going on these days. How the president seems to be legitimizing so much of the racism that seems always to be there beneath the surface.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. As you say, you don't have to scratch very far to find that. What about the racism of Mineko's father?
Oh, well, I mean, the Japanese have their own sense of superiority to others in the world. So many societies do, but the Japanese are, for the most part, just as opposed to having their children marry outside the race as others. And that was part of my experience. I mean, I married in Japan, and my wife got disowned for 6 months. Only 6 months, though. It wasn't bad. Because they knuckled under pretty soon when they realized they were going to lose their daughter. She was going to go off to America, and they wouldn't see her again. So they came and visited us, and we got along beautifully. I had a great relationship with my in-laws. But the first reaction, partly because, there's a scene toward the end of the book where Mineko, the little girl, she's 3 years old at the time, is buried under the roof of her house when it's bombed. There's the bombing of Tokyo, and her house is blasted to bits, and she's nearly killed. Her mother is badly wounded, and all of that. This is based entirely on my wife's experience in not in Tokyo, but in Kyushu. Her family home was bombed just a matter of 2 weeks before the end of the war, and she was buried, and she came out with a mouthful of dirt. Her mother was badly wounded, and all of that I just borrowed from her. So needless to say, her relatives were not happy to hear that she was going to marry one of the enemy. I was still... Americans were still the enemy in 1966. So it was a long-lasting thing. So that certainly, that was a strong lasting. I guess you could call it racism, sure, but with a bit of justification if your house has been bombed. And
absolutely,
yeah.
I know that you travel to Japan often,
Mm-hmm.
And your wife is from Kyushu,
Right?
Uh-huh. And what prefecture, what city in Kyushu is she from?
She's from Saga.
Ah.
And I'm trying to think. There are several scenes in the book set in Kyushu. Of course, Nagasaki is in Kyushu. There's a big Nagasaki scene near the end. So because of the family connection, I've spent a lot of time in Kyushu, so it was not that hard for me to write about Kyushu and various places there. That's why Kyushu is so prominent in the book.
I see. Speaking of Nagasaki, I've been there myself and sort of marvel at the city and how beautiful it is.
It really is. It's a
but
handsome place.
Your portrayal of the city during the bomb was just chilling. It was just chilling to have it portrayed in that way, especially if, for my case, I read that after I had visited Nagasaki, and I still can remember just how impacted I was by what you wrote. Was that based on research that you did in the city, or?
It was. At one point, I've always been a professor of Japanese literature. There was one point at which it occurred to me that I had not been reading anything connected with the atomic bombs. That there is a whole subsection of Japanese fiction called Genbaku Bungaku, atomic bomb literature. I had probably half-consciously just avoided it, kind of being aware of how awful it must be, and also as an American, with some sense of guilt. So then I decided I better stop this. I'd better face what my country did at that end of the war and learn about it. And so I read a lot of atomic bomb literature. I read about books about what happened in Nagasaki, also in Hiroshima also. But I was always kind of more horrified by Nagasaki because the first bomb we knew, the military people in this country knew what kind of effect it had had on the civilians in Hiroshima, and yet they dropped that second bomb.
3 days later.
Yeah, and I that's why I wanted to concentrate on Nagasaki in this book rather than Hiroshima. You hear about a lot, but the Nagasaki bombing to me was totally without a justification. And all of the horrible details in that chapter are taken from accounts of the wounding of people and the deaths that occurred. I don't think I made up anything. Those details, such as the people who seem to have rubber gloves hanging from their fingertips. Maybe we can edit this out. I don't know, but they're walking along and they seem to have rubber gloves hanging from their fingertips, but it's their own skin. I really felt one thing I wanted, after all, I'm an educator, not a novelist. I'm a professor. And I wanted to educate people about what happened. And one of the things that I thought Americans should learn more about is what happens when their military bombs other countries. We kind of almost casually send off planes and missiles to bomb other countries, and it does terrible things to them. You'll find people saying that the atomic bombs were dropped in order to shorten the war. Millions of Americans would have been killed otherwise, et cetera, et cetera. I don't buy that at all. I also believe that these bombs were dropped on yellow people, not white people, and that's not irrelevant. So that's all part of the kind of hypocrisy I see in the book, both on the part of the ideals for which America stands for and the ideals for which Christianity stands. It was not Christian at all to be doing this kind of thing to people. Almost ironically, the largest community that was destroyed in Nagasaki was the Catholic community. That was one of the places in Japan where there had been a long tradition of Christianity. It was blown to bits. The bomb landed very near that.
Ultimately, your book is about love. It's a love story.
Well, okay, I'll accept that.
I mean, that was my reading of the book. In that, we'll take Billy for example, or Bill. who it becomes his quest to find his mother.
Right.
He eventually does, which was I was quite a surprise. I didn't think he was going to.
Should you be giving this away?
Well, they will have heard it, listened to it, I think, by this
I
time.
see.
Yeah.
Okay.
I was surprised by that you decided to do that in the end, in the book, that you really decided, because the buildup led me to believe this wasn't going to happen.
I actually, by sheer coincidence, about a week ago, I got an email from somebody who's reading the book, and he sent me a short note at the point where Mitsuko, the heroine, seems to have been killed in Nagasaki, and his phrase was, "A dagger in the heart." I'm crying, and I think he meant it. He was really. He was, I've had some very emotional responses to this book, which I'm delighted to hear, because I wrote the book not to be an objective study of the war or the wartime situation or anything. I wrote it to be something that people feel something about. I'm pleased to find that those who do read the book do have an emotional reaction to it. And I hadn't seen anything quite that emotional for a long time. He said, "A dagger in the heart," to learn that Mitsuko died in Nagasaki. Well, of course, I don't know what happened after. I haven't heard from him since. I don't know if he's gone on and read the rest of the book and found out that in fact Bill does find her at the end. I didn't want it to be a happy ending as such, but finally it is a positive. I think ultimately it's a very positive book. It's got an awful lot of dark stuff. It's meant to make people upset about the Christian hypocrisy and the democratic hypocrisy that lay behind so much of what happened. And finally, it's my own shock and anger that propelled the book to begin with. But finally, it's that love that I wanted to have as the final word.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think you did an excellent job of that. There is a love conflict, if you will, and that's quite strong in the book, and that's between Bill, and his father, which never does seem to quite work out for the two of them.
It's looking a little more hopeful toward the end, but
towards the end, yeah. But here, the father is now alone, as he says several times. I'm alone. I'm alone.
Right.
Was there someone in mind when you wrote that, or was this just a way of building the character?
You mean a model for Tom's being
of his lack of being a good parent?
Mm-hmm. No, I'm afraid I don't have a model for that. It's possibly my own atheism. I wanted to see this guy suffer. Mm-hmm. No, it wasn't quite that overt, but he was the anti-Emory Andrews for me, and I thought that as someone who didn't live up to his Christian ideals, that there should be some kind of punishment, and I think he ended up in a rather miserable state.
When Bill goes to camp, was there any literature, anything in your research that supported that? I mean, really, he was not the child of Mitsuko,
right?
And he was a little blonde boy, and he's going off to camp. Did you have anything in your research that supported that?
I crossed my fingers on that one. I don't have research that shows little blonde boys getting taken into the camp, but I do have pictures of the residents of Minidoka. There was it was just like a high school yearbook. There was a book called Minidoka Interlude, It's there. There are a couple of copies of it that are in the Seattle Public Library. It was a very important source for me because it gave a lot of, there were pictures of, say, the uniforms that the nurses wore in the hospital. So the description of the pinafores that they're wearing in the book is based on those photos. But they had a group shot of every block. And lots of people, and I swear you can pick out a few little blonde boys and people who are clearly not Japanese. What they're doing there, I can't tell you for sure. It was kind of a stretch to have this Japanese woman bringing her little blonde, quote-unquote, son into the camp. I particularly wanted her to make that remark. When her sister says they'll never let him in, she says something about she's become so much stronger by that point in the book that she says it's what's in their brains, that's all. It's what's in their brains that matters. And if I tell them that he's my son, he'll be my son, or something to that effect. And so she gets away with it. She brings him in. He suffers reverse racism himself. I mean, some of the kids tease him for not being Japanese, and but as far as the verisimilitude of having a little blonde boy in the camp actually as one of the inmates, that I can't swear to that.
Okay, well that's fair. It was, I don't want to say I thought it was a stretch myself. It was an interesting way of connecting the characters together to sort of keep the narrative moving. So,
I do know that there was one little blonde boy who was allowed into the camp on a regular basis, and that was Emery Andrews' son, who turns out to be, for a while at least, a playmate of Billy's in the camp. His name is Brooks Andrews. This is modeled on the real Brooks Andrews. I had to contact him. I got permission from him to use his father's name and to mention him in the book. So there's a scene in which Frank Sano saves the two little blonde boys, from drowning in the irrigation canal.
Yeah,
that's made up, but he liked that. But he was really there. I mean, he spent a lot of time in the camp. Whether he actually got photographed with other members, with members of one of the blocks or not, I can't say. But I know that he was there a lot.
So you are primarily known as an educator, obviously. You taught both at the University of Washington as well as Harvard. But you really are mostly known as a translator of Haruki. Did I say that right?
Murakami,
sorry.
Murakami Haruki, or in the English style, Haruki Murakami. Or Haruki Murakami. You want to give it a real American,
Northwest kind of sound. Yeah, we'll call it that. Are you still actively translating?
I am, yeah. I could never quite bring myself to retire. I retired from Harvard in 2006 and came back to live in our house here in Bellevue. But I've done a lot of work since then. In fact, I just recently published a new anthology from Penguin called The Penguin Book of Japanese Short Stories. A big, thick, pink book, which I recommend very highly.
Okay.
And right this moment, I'm working on a project translating no drama. Less well known, of course, than Murakami, less well known than Japanese fiction. But I've always been very interested in musical theater. I'm a big opera fan, and no drama is one of the things I've put a lot of time into. And I've been working with a novelist who likes to translate medieval no plays into modern Japanese, and I've been working on translating his modern Japanese versions into English. So that's the project I have going these days.
Wow. So the Sun Gods, has it been translated into Japanese?
It has.
By you?
Not by me, no.
Not by you.
I translate into English, my native language, but I sent it to a very good friend of mine who translates the other way, hoping that he would find me a translator. And he said, I love this book, I'll do it. And I was shocked because he is absolutely in demand for, he's always telling me about his backlog, his 7-year backlog to translate various things. He translates Paul Auster, and he's done an incredible amount of translating. His name is Motoyuki Shibata.
Any idea how the book is being received in Japan?
It came out only a month or two after the English version because I sent it to him early enough, and he found a publisher that wanted to bring it out on the anniversary of the end of the war, which was August 15th. So August 15th, let's see, the English came out in June. I think by August 15th we had the Japanese translation done and out, and it went into a second printing in Japanese. It was 4,000 copies and then another 1,000. Here they're still working on the first 4,000. So it did, in a way, it did better in Japanese than here. And again, my motivation is an educator's motivation. I was hoping that this book would help Japanese learn about what happened, what happened in terms of the treatment of Japanese and Japanese Americans during the war. And it's been a revelation for a lot of people in the country. There is not that much knowledge about the relocation camps.
Well, it was the first time that I knew within the relocation camps that there was an opportunity, we'll call it an opportunity, there was a desire on the part of the government that those non-citizen Japanese, non-American citizen Japanese that were in the camp were encouraged to return.
Oh, yes.
I didn't know that up to this point. Being from the Northwest, we know a little bit more about the existence of the camps, but I just didn't have any knowledge of that at all, that you should go back.
The boat that Mitsuko takes from the U.S. back to Japan is the boat that was actually used. It was called the Gripsholm. I think it was a Danish ship or a Swedish ship, I think. The Gripsholm was actually used for trading people back and forth, for trading prisoners back and forth. And she leaves Minidoka at exactly the right time to catch a boat that actually went that point.
Huh?
Yeah, I maybe spent an almost foolish amount of energy making this historically accurate. So she would have taken that boat that actually went. There's all kinds of stuff. I mean, if you look at the front page, the front cover has a photograph of one of the Japanese pages of the Minidoka camp newspaper called The Irrigator. It was primarily an English language newspaper because most of the readers were second generation Japanese who couldn't read the Japanese language. But for the people who read Japanese, they had a Japanese section, and this is one page from that section. This is what August 21st, 1943. That was the very date of the Bon Odori dance scene at the end. And there's talk about the name of the paper, and also the fact that the word Minidoka, which is Minidoka in English, is spelled in Japanese Minedoka, which then becomes a good hint for tracing down the origin of one of the characters. I won't go into more detail than that. Minedoka was really how it was written, and that's what we have right here on the front cover of the book.
Great. So, Jay, going to write another novel?
I've got a few hanging around, but I have my doubts.
Well, I have to say that I'm sorry to hear that.
Thank you.
and maybe you'll change your mind. So
This issue got me so passionately involved. It was something really special for me. And I don't think there's an issue as such that that I feel I need to write a novel about.
okay, understand.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Well, we want to thank you so much for coming in today.
Thank you.
Again, this is Rick Sipe, a volunteer at Washington Talking Book and Braille Library, and I'm talking with Jay Rubin, the author of The Sun Gods. Thanks, Jay.
Thank you very much, and I'm terribly honored that my book is being recorded this way and distributed. It's really just it was amazing news to hear this.
Great. Good. Thanks again.
Thank you.
The Sun Gods is available as an audiobook in the catalog of the Washington Talking Book and Braille Library. You can find it with the class ID DBC 06818. And a word about a book we covered in a previous episode, Biking Uphill in the Rain, The Story of Seattle from Behind the Handlebars by Tom Fucaloro, is now in the catalog of the Washington Talking Book and Braille Library. We talked about it with him in our 36th episode, which debuted May 28th. You can find the book with a class ID DBC 30158. If you have any questions or comments about the library, or to see if you qualify for our services, visit WTBBL or call us at 206-615-0400 or toll free at 800-542-0866. This episode of Literary Notes is a production of the Washington Talking Book and Braille Library based in Seattle, Washington. Today's interview was conducted by Rick Sipe. I'm your producer, Nathan Ureta. Thanks for listening.
Every story deserves to be heard, and everyone deserves access to it. The Washington Talking Book and Braille Library provides audiobooks, Braille, and reading support for people across the state who can't read standard print. That car, truck, or boat you're not using anymore can help fund those services. Donate your vehicle today. Pickup is free, running or not. Start now at careasy.org/WTBBL.